Welcome to the Garden Like a Guru Show, and I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, a permaculture instructor, and my lovely co-host, Sarah Bradshaw, is nowhere to be found. The garden guru is lost somewhere on the highway between here and there, and God knows where, because it's a smoke-filled atmosphere here in the Sunnybray area in the shoe shop. We cannot even see the mountains, can't see the lake, can't see your nose. Well, you can see your nose, but there's ash from the fires everywhere. Lots of evacuation notices. We're okay and we're safe where we are, but I gotta say there's ash everywhere, and it's been really tough on the garden. So let's talk about today and what's coming up this week. So we're just finishing the first quarter of the moon. Very powerful time. This is the time where you're setting your intentions and getting really clear on what you want to manifest, not only in your life, but in your garden. Okay, we're in Libra. The Venus is dominant in Libra, so we're just coming into Venus. So all of your sun signs are full of some love. So all you love buddies, this is a time of deepening your relationship. This is the time where Venus shines through, and she's conjunct with Jupiter, or aligned with Jupiter, and Jupiter is a huge energy. So it's magnified by tenfold plus by all the energy of Jupiter. So a lot going on in the area of self-love. So love yourself, love your garden, love what's happening in your life. And it's a time for, if you're a Libra out there, it's a time of new relationships, right? So get your butt out, get around, and meet the other new people, because this is the opportunity for new beginnings in your love life. But we're not here to talk about love life. We're about here to talk about the garden. But I just know all this because if you tuned in to the first show of the day, which was the healing hour, you would know exactly what's happening with your moon sign and your astrological sign. And if you missed the show, head over to the Wellness Academy on YouTube, listen to the show where Corey goes through each sign and tells you why the energy from Venus, right? And backed up by the power of Jupiter is really bringing some intensity in your life. And of course, each sign is differently influenced by this magnificent energy. And also we're on the lunar node as well, and lined with, I can't remember what it was, aligned with, what was it? I can't remember, Neptune, which means there's a lot of more power behind it as well. So moving on here, this is the time for planting. So this is still good. So this is really the time when you should be making a shift in your garden and doing your fall planting. So if you want to have lettuce in the latter part of the fall, then you should start getting it started now, okay? If you want to have a second crop, this is the time you need to get it in for the cool fall evening so you can harvest what you would normally harvest first thing in the spring. All right, and I know that Sarah was out here, I think it was yesterday or the day before. All the days are blending together, and we learned how to do pruning of tomatoes. So if you're part of the inner garden circle, then there'll be some short videos on how to prune tomatoes taken by yours truly. Of course, I had the camera on my phone the wrong way up, so some of it will be a bit wonky. We'll try and make it so you don't have to watch it sideways. And then I realized, oh yeah, you're supposed to have it sideways. So some of it shot sideways and some of it straight up and down. But basics of pruning tomatoes, quite simple. Go to where the blossoms are. And if the blossoms are dried up, then go back to where the blossoms are fresh, and you know that they're going to be pollinated and come into and grow tomatoes. And then just cut off at the first terminus past that, right? So go to where the blossoms are, go to one branch where of leaves past that, and prune it off so that all the energy goes into the blossoms. Because if you're anything like our tomatoes, there are strings of tomato plants everywhere. I have to spring them up in the rafters in the greenhouse. So that's what you do. So always go to the blossoms, then cut back to the first terminus after the blossoms. Try and clean them up. Any dead leaves, you clear off. Any suckers that are between, so if you've got a Y branch and in between it is a new sucker, pinch that sucker out. because it's just going to be more leaf and no actual tomatoes. Please sharpen your cutters. We didn't sharpen the cutters and they were dull, and the tomatoes were screaming at us. You could smell the tomatoes in the greenhouse because they're under duress because it wasn't a clean cut. So please be nice and kind to your plants. Make sure you sharpen your pruning shears so they're good and sharp. It's also time to go over your grapes and do the same thing. If you want to know how to take care of your grapes, you just go onto YouTube. There's great videos there, but basically you want a terminus every 6 inches that's sticking up with new buds on it. And you want 3 bud forms coming off of there. And we want to prune all of the other leaf material back so that the actual cluster of grapes has all the sun that it can get. So this is a time to do some more serious pruning so that the energy goes into the grapes, not into growing more leaves. And I have to say it works really well. I would say our grapes this year, even though it's terrible weather, smoky, and not good, growing conditions because it's, clouded over smoke, my grapes are 3 to 4 times bigger than any other year. So it does work. So it's important to do your cutting of grapes. And also it's a good time to also prune your roses. Our roses need to be pruned. They're just like a briar patch with, the briar patch where that crazy Robert used, that, I can't even speak, but that, what is his name? That bunny would always get caught in the briar patch, right? And so that our roses look like a briar patch. So you need to really cut them back. Same technique. If that flowering or that growth does not terminate in a flower, then cut it back. You want all the energy to go into your buds now. So you finish off the season with all the buds having enough energy to come into full blossom right into the fall. So get rid of that excess greenery that will not produce any more buds and any more flowers. So that's it for the rose as well. So this is the pruning time, cleanup time. Also check your cabbages. We just found that we had some sort of sticky aphids going on. I don't know what that was all about, but we made sure that we catch it right away and take out all the plant material that's infected, get it out of there. And ideally, you need to put it in a hot compost. So maybe dig into your compost and get it in deep enough that it gets well cooked and processed, so none of that will carry over to next year. So it's time to really clean up and look at the dead material in your garden and make sure that there's no infestations of aphids or bugs. And if there is, clean it up as soon as possible. We're still in the midst of harvesting blackberries. That crop is still coming on really nice. Need the watering, lots and lots of water. It just seems like 2 hours of watering going on the garden. It seems like it cannot get enough water. I guess the air is really dry with all the fire and smoke, so it just sucks the moisture right out of the garden. So please be sure to water, and really in checking the ground where we've just watered, you go down like 2 inches and it's dry as a bone. So it's really hard to keep up with the watering at this time of year with all the smoke and haze and fire going on. Also, it's a fruit day, and down in the orchard, we were down there the other day, and of course the plums are dropping off, and that's a normal at this time of year, but I highly recommend if you do have plum trees and they are dropping off, don't worry, just as long as you have enough water. It's sort of nature doing its own self-pruning, but what would be good is to rake up all the plums on the ground and get them into the compost as soon as possible, because very soon, within 2 to 3 weeks, they'll be swarming with wasps. And I tell you what, picking plums with bare feet or naked legs around wasp-filled fruit on the ground is not fun. So this is a time to clean up all that fruit that's on the ground, because it will attract all the wasps and it won't be fun to do all of the harvesting. So we're coming into harvest time for the plums. And then of course, after that, we'll be into the apple season, which will be the last of the year. So lots going on in your garden. And the other thing that we've been doing is we noticed that the squirrels were into our nut trees. And so that was the indication that if we wanted to have any nuts this year, we better beat the squirrels. So the squirrels are your early warning system. If you don't think they're ripe and the squirrels are in the tree, then they're ripe enough for the squirrels, then they're ripe enough for you. So harvest them and bring them in. And right now we have them on screens drying, and there's enough fresh, when you pick the nuts, there's usually green area around them. There's enough green in the stem to help them go through to full fruition and fruiting. So you let them dry out until the leafy type material is brown, and then you can start to then make sure they're good and dry to put them away for the season. I loved Sarah when she was here. She told the story about one of her friends whose neighbor was over and said, the squirrels are in your nut tree and they're harvesting all the nuts. Aren't you worried? And he said, no, not at all. They're doing me a favor. He said, come with me. And he took her over to her trailer, and the squirrels had come through, I don't know, the opening in the trailer, and where the bunk bed was, they had filled it up with all the hazelnuts and walnuts and nuts. So all he had to do was go over to the trailer and scoop up a bucket full of nuts whenever he wanted them, and then the squirrel did all the work for him and cleaned them all up. So we don't have our squirrels trained here, but I would love to know where the squirrel's little nest is, and I'm sure there will be enough for him and for us. So training your squirrels or finding out where your squirrel packs away those nuts saves you a lot of time from having to do all the harvesting by your own. So training your squirrels. Right now, the squirrel's really training us. He's training us to make sure that there's enough sunflower seeds in the bird feeder so that he can have his morning breakfast. He's really quite a courageous little one. I guess there's more than one, but I can get about 2 feet away from him. No trouble whatsoever. He knows I can't catch him. He knows the dog is not really paying any attention to it. And the cat's too lazy right now because of the smoke to go outside. So it's fair game for the squirrels and the chipmunks to raid the feeder. So I think that's about what I have to say about the garden. We are looking at a pressure canner and getting a good deal on that. Pressure canners are one of the another way in which to deal with your produce as you harvest. We're vegetarians here, or at least I am. But if you're processing meat like salmon, you want to get it fresh, and doing it in a pressure canner is really the way to go. It's good to do things like squash in it as well, and it's great for jams, and so you don't have to put them in a hot bath and do them that way, with a steamer. With boiling water. So, and most pressure cookers, as long as you have a rat on the bottom of them, can do the pint size and smaller ones, jars as well. So it's another thing we'll be talking about, and there'll be some video on how to use a pressure canner and not blow up your kitchen. So that'll be coming in the garden circle, how to preserve your food. So we'll be doing a whole demonstration on drying, because we have a food dryer, how to do it that way, and how to do vacuum sealing, and how to use a pressure cooker. Those are our ways of doing it here on the farm, and also how to prepare everything, how to make sure that there's enough stem on your pumpkins and on your squashes to store, how to clean up your root cellar, how to regulate the right amount of moisture and temperature in your root cellar. So if you do have a root cellar, now's the time to get in there and put the early warning message out to all the spiders that it's time to vacate, because you're going to go in there with a broom and clean it up, right? And get rid of any of the old produce or anything that's decayed in there and get it ready for this year's crop. So it's getting ready for the harvest, and also purchasing your jars. If you're canning, now is the time to purchase your jars because they're very inexpensive, but within 30 days from now, they're going to skyrocket and you're going to be paying a lot of money for your jars. Also, the best way to get your jars is also to do your garage sale circuit and look for jars. Now is the time to get that all together. And don't forget, buy your lids and your rings. Buy them by the case. It's the cheapest. You can never have enough. Don't use them this year. You'll have them for next year. So those are the things that I wanted to share on this show. And we don't have our magic garden guru to carry on a conversation about things deeper than that. But I'm sure we will track her down through all the smoke and find her and bring her back to you to be on the show for next year at the same time, same place. So tune in for the show. Hopefully you enjoyed what few tips I had for you from the permaculture perspective. Remember, though, you can't overwater with this type of heat. It's really important to get the water into the fruits because they need to have all that energy to fully fruit. And also, everything in your garden is under stress from the smoke. So make sure you're on top of all the bugs, right? Check everything for aphids and catch it right away. If your plant is infested, then just pull it out by the roots and get it out of there so it doesn't spread. Ideally, if you could burn it, then do it. So for example, if you have a wood burning fireplace and that you can't do anything outside, but if you do have a fireplace, I would prefer that you actually burn the material, then put it in the compost. But if you're going to put it in the compost, put it deep in the compost so the heat will take care of all the aphids and the bugs. So I think that's a wrap. I'm going to just talk to my co-producer here in the background. Michael, do you have anything you'd like to add to the show today? They cannot hear by Michael in the background, so I just asked him if he had anything else he'd like to add to the show, and he said, no, that's a good wrap. So we're going to be back same time, same place next week with the Garden Guru Show with the lovely Garden Guru herself, once we track her down, the lovely Sarah Bradshaw. So don't forget, sign in to the Garden Circle, lots of valuable information. And remember, you're never too late. When you become a member, you're going to have access to all those videos for next year, which will take you through the whole cycle of how to prepare the ground for your garden, how to plant your seeds, how to manage your garden, how to tend it, and then how to harvest the produce and how to store it for the winter. So it's really, really important. The latest news that I heard is there is pretty well a drought worldwide now. The crops are coming in at less than 25% of the normal rate. We're in for a major food security issue, and food will be, certainly in the grain area, will be quite scarce. So this is the time for you to learn about food security. I really want you to know where your local produce is produced, where your local organic farm is. Make arrangements with them, find out when they're selling the produce. If you can order vegetables for storing in your greenhouse, like potatoes and carrots and onions and squashes, pumpkins, now's the time to do it and get ready to store it, because God knows this may be a very difficult winter, given with the fact that we have certainly the disasters with all the fires going on. And the latest report from the men's group is we can expect an increase in volcanic activity right in the ring of fire as electromagnetic energy on the earth ramps up. And furthermore, the indication is that there will be earthquakes and volcanic eruptions in areas which were not normally designated as such areas by the volcanologists and the earthquake experts. So a lot more happening like what's happening in Haiti. So again, that's going to affect the food supply. So all the more reason to learn where is your food coming from and how to secure it in a safe way for you for this winter. So it's really important. Maybe get some garbage cans, the metal ones, and get some bags of flour in from your local mill and get them stored in the metal garbage cans so the mice can't get out. I'm not kidding you. It's time to really get your act together. So don't say I didn't tell you. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to forewarn you. Better to be safe than sorry. So that's a wrap. And same time, same place next week. Until then, be healthy, wealthy, and wise. Bye for now.